Ben Eadie was prop master for Ghostbusters Afterlife and has been hands-on with some of the coolest props imaginable. We sat down to talk about what it takes to make a Ghostbusters prop, his personal experience of working on set, and any advice for your own builds, whether you're a beginner or an expert. So, Ben has been my personal guide for building Ghostbusters props. I was out at the hardware store and I'm like, I don't know what to buy. I think Ben is going to have to help me. And we're FaceTiming. And I'm like FaceTiming down the aisle of Ace Hardware. And Ben's like,
not that one. Next
buy
aisle.
this one. Yeah, ignore that one. There's this really, what I would call a unique aesthetic to a Ghostbusters prop. And somebody, I was on Reddit, which is always a dangerous place to be, by the way, but I was on Reddit, and somebody said that, could we call the Ghostbusters aesthetic ecto punk? And I was like, that's a really interesting.
Yes. Ecto punk. Yep.
And the fact that you're nodding tells me you know exactly what they meant, what I mean by that. There's just a vibe to a Ghostbusters thing.
Well, it's like grungy and dirty and used. That's one thing I love about the props too, is that, well, from a prop maker's perspective, like I worked on like Star Trek, and spaceships are a freaking nightmare because they have to be perfect. And you know, oh my god, it's so
especially
hard.
Star Trek, because everything's clean. It's a utopia. Yeah.
And I was so lucky. I was doing effects. I didn't have anything to do with the props or that. I was like, oh, good. I could do all the gross stuff on the outside, right? With dirty props and stuff, it's like, you know, people are like, well, you know, how do you beat up coveralls and stuff? And I never did it, but I know exactly how it's done. Is you wash them like 40 times. You have somebody wear them. You literally, in some cases, drag them behind a car with some bricks on it, right? You just beat them up, and like, it's beyond being absurd. It's fun. People are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm making like, you know, X amount of dollars per hour to screw around like a 12-year-old. It's awesome.
Our Afterlife that you worked on was really in that used aesthetic. It was like super used, which I loved. And I know when you were working with Adam Savage on his pack, he loves that aesthetic as well. It's like one of his favorite places to be.
Oh yeah, totally.
You presented this awesome prop to Adam.
Yeah, that was put together by a guy named Shannon Chappell. He just killed it with that. And, you know, I helped out a little bit, but it was one of those where I told him, hey, I'm going to head out to Adam's cave. You know, maybe you should put something together. And he's like, yeah, I got an idea. And I was thinking like a little tiny widget. And, you know, what was it, 48 hours, I show up at his place, and he's like, do you think this will fit in your suitcase? I'm like, dear God, man.
Yeah, that's not a small item, is it? It's
no.
That obviously isn't a prop in the movie, but it has that exact vibe that we were talking about. It's got that ecto punk vibe to it.
Yeah, and it's that is nothing more than one person's sort of love letter to Adam, and, you know, a love for building props and stuff. And I think that's it. You know, it pretty much exemplifies exactly that.
Let's just kind of roll the clock back a little bit. How did you end up getting your gig on Afterlife? What was that like?
So normally, like, I live in a city called Calgary, Alberta. So it's in, like, you know, middle of Canada, not middle of Canada, like western middle of Canada. Right. And we don't have a whole lot of, or didn't have a whole lot of movies. After Ghostbusters, a lot of studios are like, hey, wait a minute, that's a place to film. But so most of my work was like out in Vancouver. So I go to, like, we call it Hollywood North. And, you know, I would do gigs in LA or New York or something like that. Like, you know, I designed, you know, specialty items. But then I heard Ghostbusters was coming to town, and I wasn't even part of the union here in town. But I found out Ghostbusters is here. So I went to the union office, said, hey, could I get citizenship status? And they said, sure. And then, I found out, like, got a hold of the people I knew going, hey, are you guys looking for, like, you know, a nerd as far as, like, you know, special effects or electronics, mechatronics? And it turns out that, like, you know, in town during the time, you know, our town is like Westerns and that sort of thing. So electronics and blinky lights and stuff, they're like, no. Right. So I walk in the door going, hey, I know this. And they're like, yes, we got the perfect job for you. I'm like, oh. But and you were talking about, like, being a nerd. And so I get, because of the scope of what they wanted me to take care of, it wasn't just your usual go meet with the head of the props department or the effects department. they wanted to meet me in person. Jason Blumenfeld and a lot of the producers like Eric Reich and Erica wanted to meet me. And I'm like super nervous because normally you get assigned to a show via the union or a special effects person, and they hire you into their shop and that's it. Right. So now I'm meeting all the big wigs. And so I'm thinking, okay, how do I prepare? So I'm getting ready for this, and I'm like, well, how do I prepare? And I'm like, oh, I got an idea. So I got some resistors from a pack and a trap and stuff, and I threw it in my briefcase. And at one point in time, I'm not sure who asked. I think it was Eric Wright. Goes, exactly how much do you know about Ghostbusters? And I lean over and I pull out like the resistors and stuff, and I go, I'm this much of a nerd. And I go, there's parts of my pack that I'm about to build. And Eric just smiled. Everybody across the table from me smiled, and I'm like, I think I got it. I think I got it.
That is the best show and tell ever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, and then, the next day I'm hired, and then he told me I was responsible for it. And then, I had to go and scoop out my pants and change them and come back.
How long were you like on set or part of the production? Because I know set is a generic term we use because there were multiple sets and multiple places. But how long were you on the job?
Right from start to finish, like at the point where they did the final shot. Other than second unit and stunts, I had a few people that I ended up hiring to do, like, say, drive the RTV and stuff like that. The only shots I can think of that I wasn't there for was like when we went into the not Walmart.
Right.
Because they didn't have anything that I had that they needed from me at that point in time. But everything was done here. Like like outside, inside, all the studio work, effects or VFX and stuff, obviously, was offsite, but they're always here in a trailer and, putting green tape on everything, annoying the hell out of us. And then, of course, they go, hey, can we scan it? And that one item that you think that you're safe to let go into their scanning system, they'll take it up there. They'll be half done. And you're running up the stairs going, I need it back.
That's funny because I was gonna show another clip actually that I think illustrates that a little bit. So this is a great video. If you haven't seen this, this is when this the first time you met Adam Savage?
No, I met him prior. Like, he was working on the Death Whistles, and I had met him in LA when I was down there to inspect the packs. But it was just a brief thing, right? We met for like an hour or two, and that was it. Then when he came and hung out at the trailer, that was like, I went hardcore nerd. But we both.
I can see that on your face. You're like, this is the best ever. Well, and he's doing the same thing. That's what I love about this video. You guys are both like the most geeked out that I think I've seen either of you.
We were so amped up. Like, the guy that was filming it, he was like, yes, because you could see both of us are feeding off each other, right? And they're just like, the camera's going, he's like not sure who to follow. And the one thing I love about this is, like, just before I had left, and I do, like, you're talking about this, and people said that it was staged, and it wasn't. Is that I got a call on my headset going, hey, we need what was it, the goggles or something like that, and literally somebody come beating up on a four-wheeler saying, hey, hop in, and I hop in with the prop and we boot off to the camera, right? This is one of the fun stories. One is that I didn't have a chance to grab coffee in the morning, so I came back and there was a coffee at my trailer, and it was, Adam had signed it saying, say sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your coffee, because for me coffee is movie fuel. That's what I call it, right? But then at lunchtime, I would take naps in my trailer, because movie, like, you're doing 12, 16-hour days easy, right? And you burn out. So if you can find a place to nap, you nap. So I go back and Adam's in the trailer, and I'm like, oh, did we miss something? Like, do we got to do some insert shots? And he's like, no, do you mind if I just hang out? And I'm like, Adam wants to hang out with me. And then we talked about tools and building shit, and it was amazing.
If anyone loves tools, we know it's Adam Savage.
Well, I can see. Let's see, is it there? Yeah, I can see.
That's right. Yeah, you're comparing your.
There we go. I can find the camera. I swear to God. There we go. For works in film, you think I could find a camera, but no.
The other funny bit of this video, you're talking about the secret button on the
Oh, yeah.
list for McKenna to use, and at that
Yeah.
very moment, it's the funniest thing ever.
Oh
The
my
very
god!
moment,
Like, I swear to God, it wasn't set up, but and I didn't even see him, and I hear his voice, and I'm like, "Damn it!"
yeah. So if you guys have not seen this video before, you need to check it out. But literally, Ben is explaining that they've put a secret button on the trigger because McKenna at that age couldn't reach the button because it is a long way with your thumb.
It is, and you got a little kid's finger, you can't get in there, so we hit a little microscopic button underneath the wooden handle,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the minute you're saying, oh, this is it, then Jason Reitman turns up, literally.
Yeah. And he's like, "Stop sharing the secrets." I'm like, "Oh my god."
There it is.
Dylan, we can't give away secrets like that. Come on.
Oh, busted.
Just tested, not busted.
Now, I might have drooled some saliva on this, Jason. I'm sorry about
dare
that.
So I can't talk to you anymore. I'm sorry. I gotta... This would have been like within the first 2 weeks of filming. So like, you know that you're in there, you're doing good, but you're still pretty cautious about who you're working with. So like
Totally.
if Jason, the big boss, comes in and he starts like, knocking you down a notch, you're like, oh, and you're not realizing that he's doing it in fun. But man, yeah.
So this is an important question. I don't want to put you in a bad spot here with anybody.
No.
We can
I'm a
cut
big
this
boy.
easy. So
Sort
what?
of.
So what things accidentally fell into the back of your truck after Afterlife?
To be completely honest, there was some fabric. I got a little bit of fabric that was left over from the uniforms and the ghost trap.
Yep.
And that was the one that got trashed, and I ended up making a YouTube video out of it. And I'll be completely honest. These like, does this happen on movies? Yes. Should it happen on movies? I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but like, the effective thing is that like, whatever production company owns those assets, and you really don't have any right to take them.
Right.
I feel bad. Don't feel bad about the RTV. I don't know.
Well, I mean, this is from your video, and I just want to pause on this shot. Tell us about this moment.
We're on set now. I ended up getting a friend. So this is where Facebook can come in amazing. I needed somebody, like, I can drive an RC car okay, but I'm not amazing at it, right? And some of the scenes that they want this thing to land perfectly and stuff, and I'm like, I don't have the chops for this. So I got into Facebook and I asked my friend group, does anybody here in town know anybody that can drive radio control cars like somewhat professionally? And it turns out that one of my wife's friends, she goes, yeah, my brother used to do it professionally for years. And I'm like, what? So I get his name, and okay, this will be a preface story to the story,
right?
because Mike needs some love. He's one of these most amazing guys. And he drove the RTV literally blind for like 200 meters. You can't see it. They line it up, and he pulls the accelerator, and it's doing 30 miles an hour on a gravel road, and somehow he keeps it on there, and it passes. He's like, okay, I got it. And I'm just like, and the way he got hired, hey, can you come? And I got a radio control car. Can't tell you what movie we're working on, but we need somebody to drive it. And he's like, sure. So he shows up, and he's got his toolkit with him. And we show him the RTV without a body or anything. It's just the raw thing, right?
Right.
And the body is part of the structures to keep it from falling apart when it hits things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's driving it, and he's trying to show off, and he runs into a park bench, right? And he breaks part of it, right? And he's like, oh my God, he's thinking I've lost. So he goes and he's like, I'll fix it. And you can see he's like blushing. He's like, he fixes it in like 30 seconds. Like he knows RC cars like crazy, right? So he fixes it in no time flat. And then he puts it down on the ground, and Jason's like, drive it. And he's like, what? And he's like, drive it. He wanted to see if he can drive. No, he didn't get hired because of his ability to drive the RC. Like, he's good at driving RC, but you can find other people that can do that. He got hired because his ability to take something that was broken and in less than 5 minutes have it operational for the camera again. That's what got him hired. Right.
Wow.
So keep that in mind. Sometimes you can have all the talent in the world, but if you can't work under high stress and make sure that, like, when those cameras are rolling, if you can't provide the pieces that they need now, it becomes very, very expensive. So you need to be able to fix anything within 5 minutes. And he absolutely can.
Because people don't always realize this, that there are so many people waiting on you, right? If you're gag or your thing or your prop or your effect
Yeah.
is in a scene with people, even if there's no people in the scene, right?
Yeah.
There's
No,
hundreds of people.
you've got lighting and props and like the DOP and all the focus pullers and like and it builds and it, oh my God. So anyways, back to the story about this. Mike wasn't available that day, right? But we didn't need the RTV. It's okay, we're good. But we're out on this country road, it's beautiful. And Jason's like, oh my God, we got the camera car here. We got a few minutes. He's like, Ben, can you drive it down the road for me? And I'm like, so this thing's unstable to start with. Then you can see I'm standing on a gravel road. Oh, it's a nightmare. But I'm like, okay, you're the boss. I'm like, I'm not gonna like you always have spares, right? I'm like, I don't think it's gonna live through this. He's like, let's just give it a try anyways. I'm like, okay, so I'm driving the RTV in a chase vehicle, and it's right beside the camera car, which is pointing out to the side. And you remember when you see during the day, and it's running down the road past just gravel and stuff like that and hopping around. Part of that is VFX, and part of that is me driving, right?
Right.
But I'm driving, everything's going good, and he's like, go faster and faster, and sweat's pouring off of my face. It looks like an airplane movie thing where it's like, ah! And then I hit a rock, and it bounces off close to the ditch, and I overcorrect, and it shoots underneath the camera car, and literally camera car over top of it, and you can just see it, right? And I look out, and we drive past. All I see is the lithium battery starting to smoke, and this is all I'm thinking in my head is like, oh, I'm so fired. That's it. I'm done. But it's been a good, my head's going, it's been a good run. This is great. I had a great time. And then I hear Eric Steelberg and Jason, and they were like, because it was open mic. Like you have open communications back and forth. They're laughing, and you just hear, that was awesome. And apparently it worked out that it looked really good coming past. So they got the shot they wanted to, right? So meanwhile, we go back to the flaming carcass of the RTV. This thing is trash.
Yeah, because those batteries, like they ignite, right? If they get smushed. Yeah. No, there was a lot of smoke, and like the DOP was running over to it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna take pictures." I'm like, "Get out of the smoke cloud!" I go, "This will hurt you." Don't, right? But we got some good pictures, and then I go and pick it up, right? And I'm just like, and all I hear is Jason go, "Stop! Don't move!" And I'm like, "What?" And so like you're out in the middle of the country and stuff, and there might have been like wasps or I don't know what, but my head's going, there might be something wrong. Don't move. That's it. And this is like military. Somebody gives you orders, you do it. Yeah. So I don't move, and I'm like, "What's up?" And then I hear an iPhone go. He's like, "I got your new headshot." That is hilarious and terrifying and amazing all at the same time.
Then I go back to our prop shop, and I'm like, okay, I'll harvest it for parts. There's still usable pieces, not many, but there are, and we've got like 3 stunt ones left. So let's get all the parts that we can from this one in case something goes wrong, especially the parts that we can't buy.
Right.
And then I've got this, this box of, like lithium battery smelling pieces. And I go to the boss and I'm like, what do I do with this? And he's like, toss it. I'm like, okay. And I walk out to the back, and there's the dumpster. There's my car. And I looked at it, and I'm like, I wonder if I can rebuild this. So like it was way after the show, and like literally when I went onto YouTube saying, hey, I want to do this, I got a hold of Jason because we had chatted a couple times since the production. I go, I have to fess up. Kind of kept the body of that one, and he's like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, now I want to rebuild it and stuff. Could I do it on my YouTube channel? And he's like, oh yeah, marketing is going to love this. I'm like, yes. Does it happen in movies? Yes. Do people take props from the movie? I really recommend you don't. Like, if you're given something out of generosity but don't just take stuff. And this is where I was right on that edge, and it's, I don't know. Like,
and the thing is with any prop, right? Like you mentioned earlier, there are always reshoots potentially later, or pickups, or whatever. So everything is cataloged and kept and stored. From a prop point of view and a costume point of view, they often will remake pieces of set and stuff because they don't often keep that stuff. Depending.
Well, and there's some props that you're building off of like photos and like the 12 frames of whatever movie it happened to be in, but that's all that's left. And you're like, oh my God. And then as soon as you put it out, then there's some, I don't know, Ghostbusters fanboy that tells you did it all wrong. And they're right. But at the same time, you're like, how do you see this? Like these people
Yeah.
should be like CSI, cold case file investigators. Like I kid you not, that video that you showed of Adam and I going through the proton pack, a week after that was there, somebody replicated it and they did it exactly. Like, I swear to God, they bought the same freaking belts from McMaster car. They bought the same motor. They did the same,
Wow.
quarter-inch perspex. Like they nailed it. I was just like, how do you see this?
Talking about fans building stuff, considering that you've, spent so much time around these props and have such a love of them, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's either already doing that, building Ghostbusters props, or somebody that's thinking of starting? What kind of,
Right.
what kind of advice or direction would you give those people?
Just get in there and start building. And like, if it's cardboard and you think it's crap, you'd be surprised at who thinks it's amazing. And you might even think it's amazing. The thing is that so many people get into this analysis paralysis, and they'll have drawings, or they'll have CAD files, or they'll have, a plan, or their friend told them that wasn't the right way to do it. So they park the project, and it's like, no, move forward, build it. That's it. And it doesn't matter what your skill level is. Like, I was at a con once, and somebody I was with, I was so mad. They looked over in this costume, and he's like, oh my God, that doesn't even look like it. And I'm like, you shut your yap. I'm like, do you see the smile on that person's face? This is nothing to do with you. Nothing. And if you say something like that again, I'm going to slap you. This guy's like, what? And I'm like, and he doesn't even realize that, like, what you see at a con, and people are like, I want movie quality props. If you've ever held a movie quality prop, what you see at a con is millions of times better than what you have on a movie.
We chatted about this, didn't we? We talked about this a while back, but about this phrase, movie quality, right?
Oh,
and yeah,
it's like military quality. No,
it's not. Yeah, I mean, those things are trashed, and they're positioned right, and they're taped up. Like the backside of them's got gaffer tape on them or hot glue.
Well,
just
you
to
talk about
together.
trashed as in it was trash. No, it started as trash. Okay.
Well, you know what?
In some cases, quite literally.
So when I stood at the side of the road filming the Ecto 1 from Frozen Empire, so they have this great trap launcher for the drone trap. I was at the side there, and there was a couple of things that were really fun when I got to see it. First of all was the very detailed instruction book that had obviously come from the prop builder. And there was a fob, I assume, for opening the mechanism and closing it, or at least opening it. I don't know if it automatically closed as well. Maybe at one time. But certainly by the time that I saw it, the lid was held together with glue, right? Because you wouldn't need to drive it like a stunt car. You just need to drive it on a New York street for something to break. So, let alone, but and that's the thing. You look at that stuff closely, and even the car, right? People don't necessarily see this, and sometimes it gets fixed in post. Even the door on the side of the Ecto on the stunt car, where the suicide door now is,
and that
where
door
the
like just about falls off every time.
Yeah, I mean there's a 1/2 inch cut out piece of the skin of the car to allow that door to fold back on itself, because there's not enough space. And again, you don't see that stuff because they swapped the car out and other stuff. They didn't in New York because they only had the one car. But so when you think, back to your point, when you're talking screen used, some of those things are not what you expect from an experience point of view when you hold them.
Oh no, like, you got to remember that we build things to last 30 shots, and that's all it has to last, right? And you've got about as much time, like you've got 5 hours to build it, so you're only going to make it for that many shots. End of story, right? Very rarely do you make a prop that's going to last, a lifetime. If you're building a prop for yourself, you're building it for yourself, for your friends, and you want the smile on their face. If you have to build something perfect to get that smile, then build that to get that smile. But don't kid yourself thinking that, you know, everything's perfect. What you see on the screen, they're movies. There's the purists, and I guess you got to let them have their thing. I don't know. I find some people annoying. It's just like, look, I'm just trying to do my job. But I absolutely adore the Ghostbusters community, because like I'm thinking before the movie comes out, I'm like, by the time you're done, you start realizing like halfway through the shoot, you're like, oh my God, that wire is wrong, and somebody's going to say something. So I had off the basically I went on social media and said, hey, I did a lot of things wrong. Be kind, be gentle. I tried, right? Thank God it worked, because I was so nervous. I'm like, I'm going to get so beaten up here.
Yeah, but I mean, I said this before, that it's been completely the opposite. I think people have loved the work that you've done, number one, and number two, have totally embraced you as such an important part of the community. I mean, that's certainly how I feel, and I'm sure other people would agree with me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And here's a good sort of prop story afterwards. Is I have the rebuilt RTV, and I took it to a comic festival, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had it on the table, and this guy's like, "Oh, this is wrong, and that is wrong, and this is wrong." And my buddy Michael Corey, the props to history, he was there, and literally standing behind me. I hear him go, and he's just waiting for the hammer to drop. So this kid, he went on and told me what was wrong and how I could improve it.
Yeah,
and I just looked at him, and I'm like, you know that was the one literally on the screen. And he's like, how'd you get that? And I'm like, I was the prop master. It's like, Michael afterwards, he's just like, yeah, I'm going to buy you a drink for that. That was amazing. And I felt bad for the kid too, because you gotta, and everybody does this. Even I've done it, where you go in and you offer unsolicited advice, and sometimes it's worth it, sometimes it's not, but you gotta read your audience. And you know, it's taken me a long time. Like me at 30 would have been that kid, right? Me at 52, less so. But you know, just be criticize, that's fine, but criticize kindly. So, you know, you can say things like, oh, that's amazing. Did you think about using this paint? Don't say what I would do. Don't say what I think was done. Say, did you think about?
You said just go for it. Just make it. I think for me, one of my experiences is that sometimes the making of the thing is almost the best part, rather than having it.
No, absolutely. So I love that you brought that up. So you got to realize that I'm not the guy that's always worked in movies and stuff. In movie sort of age, I'm pretty young. I've only been at it 8-10 years. Now what I did before was, like, I worked as an engineering consultant. I've got aeronautical engineering as a background, and I worked as a freelance consultant for 15 years before that. And I ended up helping a friend, and I ended up breaking world records with human powered vehicles. So we've got some recumbent bikes that we built, and recumbent boat. And I built a whole bunch of really unique recumbent bikes, trying to figure out geometries and stuff. And people are like, why aren't you out riding it? And I'm like, because I'm not interested in the ride. I just wanted to build the bike. After I'm done that, it's like, what am I building next? So like, but knowing that, like, you don't have to enjoy it all the time. Like, if it needs to go to the dump, it needs to go to the dump. If it needs to be recycled into another prop, then recycle it into another prop. Don't, you know, in the end, if you got a smile on your face, you're doing it right.
And that's the thing, isn't it, about, you know, the different quality, I'm going to call it, of the end result for people. That you see. You know, when I was out at the premiere, and, you know, at the Firehouse beforehand, I saw a whole range of different qualities of you know, proton packs. I saw one made out of cardboard that a kid had made. And then, you know, I saw the guys from Germany. They're incredible engineers that built.
Oh my God, their little Stay Puffs are beyond belief.
So good. Those guys are amazing. I mean, the epitome of German engineering right there.
Yes.
But what was cool was that everyone was, it didn't matter that, the German guys with their incredible engineering and the kid with his cardboard proton pack, everyone was enjoying the moment. And I think that's the thing,
And
right? Is that if that process brings you joy and the experience of building it brings you joy, that's what matters, right?
And that cardboard proton pack might have this little magic fold in it that will tip off somebody else to build something magical. And the next, like half the, I, before I got into movies, I ended up, because of world records, I would speak at like, local universities, colleges, high schools. And I had this thing where it's failure way to success. Right. And the thing is a lot of people don't realize that penicillin was made by a mistake. A microwave was made by a mistake.
Right.
And people trying to achieve things. So like this prop might one day bring out a new genre of living that you had no idea how it's going to affect things. Like some of the stuff I learned in special effects has like what's behind me now is less about a prop shop and more about ham radio and antennas, because I'm making fabric antennas of all things. And that was just half of it is because I'm not afraid to put things together. In fact, when I first kind of threw the idea of this antenna to some local guys, and one was a professor at the university, he goes, "Oh, that'll never work." Well, that never work is turning into a full-time living. So, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Like, just freaking do it. And if an expert's telling you it will never work, that is more than enough reason to freaking try.
Right. The expert's only the expert at that moment until somebody exceeds their knowledge and then becomes the next expert. And it just goes on and on.
Yeah.
If you want to hear more from this conversation I had with Ben Eadie, you're going to want to watch this next video that will be available here as soon as it's published.